Hey, it's the weekend, so I've just been nice and lazy. Haven't really done anything too productive in the last 24 hours. However, I was watching various YouTube videos now that I've got a VPN, and I often surprise myself because I'm not into reality TV. I don't usually watch reality TV shows, but my mind was caught by the show To Catch a Predator on MSNBC. Well, that was the original network. There's clips on YouTube. This is quite a well-known show. It's presented by um, Dateline NBC and hosted by Chris Hansen. And basically, the concept, if you haven't seen this, is that predators, namely paedophiles, and also there's another word for people who prey on young pubescent teenagers. It's technically paedophiles is for those who target children. There's another word for those who target young teenagers. I forget the word now. It's not exactly the same thing. Both illegal, of course, but anyway, to catch a predator. So what he does, or what the show does, is set up a sting operation and set up a situation whereby they catch the predator in the process of trying to groom or seduce an underage person, sometimes girls, sometimes boys. Um, and what happens is they come to a house from a pre-arranged conversation, and then after a few minutes of talking, Chris Hansen comes out and he speaks to them. He asks what they're doing there, and there's a dialogue. Then the cameras come out, and usually there's law enforcement waiting outside to arrest them. Now, I've watched a few of these clips, and it's interesting. It makes a lot of interesting philosophical and moral questions. Um, from the outset, let me be very clear. I think what these guys are doing is disgusting, um, and I think there is definitely intention there. One big area when we're defining it's like in any serious crime, there are grey areas, like with rape, for example. She says one thing, he says another. Well, when we come to the issue of paedophilia, the question is to what extent were they going to go through with it? Now, I happen to think that someone who drives 2.5 hours across the state is planning to go ahead with something other than a conversation. That was one clip. I think there probably are two kinds of paedophiles, right? I think there are those who look at images online, which is it's disgusting. Um, I don't think necessarily all of them would act on it, but there are those other dangerous ones who will act on it. Nevertheless, even if those who aren't acting on it are fueling those who do, because the sort of filthy material that they're looking at is child abuse, and so even if they're not doing it themselves, they are fueling that disgusting behaviour. Um, now, the approach that Chris Hansen takes is interesting because unlike Steve Wilkos or Jeremy Kyle, there's certain egotistical talk show hosts who I have very little respect for, and I've said why in other videos because I think they're full of it. Um, the approach that he takes is actually very calm. He doesn't yell at them. He doesn't get his men to rough them up. Not that that would be legal, but his approach is almost like a disappointed parent or a head teacher who's asked a naughty student to come to the office to be told off for smoking behind the classroom. Um, and I think that's almost more effective because he's not yelling. He's almost trying to act like a psychologist or understand why are they doing this? Well, why did you come here? Um, and he's civil towards them. He doesn't yell. He doesn't say, "Oh, you're disgusting." He's actually civil towards them now. Some might say he's too civil. There could be that could be said, but I think if he didn't take that approach, they would either get defensive and it would just turn into a very difficult situation whereby that would make it harder to arrest them, or they would just run. If they see some guy come out, and obviously they were expecting to have sex with a teenager, and that adult man comes out, with a baseball bat or something. Many people would say they deserve that, but I don't think that approach would work in terms of getting them to fess up and basically exposing them. Now, the show hasn't been without criticism, and I sort of see where that criticism comes from. It gets into a murky legal area of entrapment, i.e., um, is this a situation whereby these people are being caught in the act of doing something, or is it a situation where they have been set up to do something that they may not have done? Um, the show has defended itself. They say it's always the predator that makes the first contact. They have an actor to play the teenager and get into a dialogue with messages. I do think that sometimes there is a little bit of a hook factor in that because the actor will often talk about sex and bring sex up. So, I don't think it's necessary. I don't entirely believe their defense. I think there is an element of this because you have to remember, in the end of the day, it's entertainment. NBC is primarily motivated by ratings. And I think the American justice system in general is far too much focused on reality TV. It's like the whole thing, the whole American justice system is one massive reality TV show. I have to say, I find that uncomfortable because I'm not necessarily sure it's the best thing for justice. Some would say it's transparent. Others would say, well, that's jeopardizing a fair trial because it's kind of trial by media. Um, I don't think these guys are innocent. I mean, they're implicating themselves with the sort of things, disgusting things that they're saying in the messages. So I don't think they're innocent. I don't think it would stand in a court of law. Nevertheless, it is ultimately a reality TV show. It's being turned into sort of entertainment. And I think Chris Hudson's pretty professional the way he goes about it. Unlike Jeremy, I love myself, Kyle. Um, I quite like his approach, but I don't know. There's also been a problem. I understand in one case in Texas, many cases fell apart and prosecutions were dropped. Now, that could be because they had a very slick lawyer who managed to argue it was entrapment, which is a very legal grey area. But it could also be because, I mean, sometimes you get these guys are very good at providing alibis, but then the thing that gives them away is the text messages. So, for example, one guy said he had a sight problem. That's why he thought the girl was boy in that case was 18 and not 13, which the boy actually said. Um, and they're always honest about their age. The actors always say that. So again, that's an area where they can't fall back on. I'm a lot more sympathetic to people who are in situations where they genuinely believed someone was older. And I came across another video. I'm going to click on it in a bit. It says, "The girl lied about her age. Now I'm a registered sex offender." I think there should be major mitigating factors in cases where it can be proven that someone's lied about their age. However, that's not the case here. Here, these guys know full well that they're talking to children, and the excuses they come out with, like I just came by to see if everything was all right. It's not normal behavior for a 44-year-old man to hang out with a 13-year-old girl or boy. So their alibis are really pathetic. I think the police approach is I mean, they have a whole SWAT team outside. I don't think these guys can seriously pose much of a physical risk unless they have a weapon. So I think that's a little bit of sensationalism. But definitely, they're potentially dangerous individuals because if they're going out of their way to physically go to someone's house, they're going to molest or have sex with a child, which will cause all sorts of problem mentally for that young person later in life. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. And there's no excuses for their behavior. One guy was a veteran, and he was talking about PTSD. But there's many veterans who suffer from PTSD and don't prey on young teenagers. So as Chris Hansen says, I I'm not judging that, but where's the connection? I don't get how that would make you become a paedophile. Um, I suppose people could say those who suffer from PTSD deal with it in different ways. Maybe some resort to alcoholism or whatever, but clearly the realm of predatory behavior is a totally different thing. Anything involving children or this sort of crime is very emotive. So it's important that justice is done in the right way. I still think there's an aspect of American justice that's too much based on entertainment and reality TV. I think this is quite professional, but I think Chris Hansen comes across as quite professional. Incidentally, I don't think the show airs anymore. Wikipedia states '04 to '07. Some of the clips look more recent than that. It doesn't look like they're 11 years old, but I believe there's been a few spin off shows. So these sting operations work in in line with watchdog group Perverted Justice, and there's been other shows like To Catch a Con Man and so on. They, like I say, have defended themselves that it's not entrapment because the predator makes the first contact, and I think that's true. It's the predator that contacts the actor. But having said that, I do think that there is an aspect of the actor. They're not saying, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable" or something. They're kind of going along with it, and in the end of the day, they wouldn't have a show if the predator said, "Oh, I'm going to leave it this time." They wouldn't have a show. So I think we need to bear in mind it is fundamentally, and shows similar to this are fundamentally entertainment. Um, I'm not saying that there hasn't been genuine good done from it, i.e., dangerous predators have been held to account, but it is ultimately an entertainment show more than based on due process. So let me know your thoughts if you're familiar with the show. Overall, I think the entrapment argument probably wouldn't work with this, but there's aspects of it that could maybe be seen as pushing towards entrapment. But the final point I would make is I don't think it is entrapment because these guys are going out of the way to go to the houses in question. They are. It's not like they're in their own house and they've went out of the way to go there, so they know what they're doing. They had plenty of time to think about what they're doing, and they still went ahead and done it. And their excuses like, "Oh, nothing." I mean, they're lying through their teeth because you can see it in the messages that they send. And it's a case of desperation. They don't get angry. They don't get. That's an interesting psychological point. They don't get angry. They get very. It shows that really they're cards because they're targeting young people, and yet they act like meek little sheep when they're caught. So it's really quite cardly. They're acting, like they're the victim. Like, oh, it's awful. Some of them have pleaded with Chris Hansen, and he remains calm and he says, "No, you have to go there." Um, I don't know how justice would stack up versus intent to do something versus doing it, i.e., if someone actually has had sex with a child versus the intent of going there. I guess in a court of law, it would need to be proven beyond doubt that that was their intention. And I think the text messages show that that is indeed the case. Okay, let me know your thoughts if you know the show and similar shows.